Today, I'm moving away from the authors who write the stories and spotlighting a very special person who devotes her days to sharing stories, hundreds and thousands of stories, actually millions now, with kids in need all over the country. Today on E Train Talks, we are celebrating Jennifer Francis, the creator of the incredible organization Bess the Book Bus. Woo! Jennifer is a supercharged literacy hero and champion of the reading kind. In fact, Jennifer's Bess the Book Bus shares around 50,000 books with kids in dozens of states across the U.S. each year. And in 2022, Bess the Book Bus celebrated its 20th birthday and gave away their millionth book. That's a lot of happy children and a lot of kids who will find, like some kids, they don't have access to books and you reach them and now they have a book to their name. And whether that was 20 years ago or now, you're still making a huge impact. And I'm just so thrilled that you're here today, Jennifer,
Oh,
to
thank
teach
you.
everybody about your journey and tell us why sharing books and promoting literacy and being a reading hero is so important and all that. So thanks
Oh,
for being here.
no, thank you. I really appreciate you having me on. It's an honor to be part of your literary world. I love what you're doing.
Thank you. And it's an honor to be talking with you today because you have fostered love of reading in thousands of kids across the United States. You've gone on nationwide trips in your Best the Book Bus, and you've reached 48 states, the contiguous United States.
Yes.
I don't know how you'd get a bus to Hawaii, but maybe one day.
We had offers.
Well, that would be a pretty awesome trip as well. And if you know anything about me, everybody, you know that spreading book joy is something I love and hope to do more of. And Jennifer is devoting her days full time to sharing reading joy with kids. She has visited schools across the country, and she's motivated kids to read, inspired kids to read, and given kids the opportunity to read. And now to the first question.
Okay.
So I read that Best the Book Bus was an idea that you came up with back in 2002, and now here we are in 2023, 21 years after the creation of your brilliant and just super kind project. And my question is, when you first dreamt up Best the Book Bus, what did you envision, and has the reality of what you've accomplished met your vision or exceeded it?
Yeah, so when I first dreamt up the book bus, I was actually looking for a place to volunteer here in I guess I call it my hometown now. I've been here so long, of Tampa, Florida. And I was feeling unfulfilled in my job. I wasn't unhappy. I just wasn't all the way fulfilled. So I started thinking about, well, what would make me feel better as a human? Maybe if I volunteered. So I was looking at all the different wonderful opportunities here in Tampa where you could volunteer, and none of them was really enough. I just felt like I really needed to dig into something and really give of myself. And I honestly thought that would make me feel better. So I looked and just didn't find anything. And I was getting really, really frustrated because all I wanted to do was volunteer and I couldn't find anybody that wanted enough. So after several weeks of this, I started journaling. And it's kind of like when you're in elementary school and you have to make the like pros and cons list, right? You brainstorm and okay, so I started thinking, okay, what am I passionate about? What do I love to do? What is important to me? What are some missing pieces I see in our community? And what could I do, right? What little piece could I do to do something? And the idea, after a long time of several sleepless nights, a couple weeks of sleepless nights, and anybody that knows me well, I used to not really ever have sleepless nights. So I woke up one morning at 3 a.m. The idea I popped into my head, and I call it the pull of the moon because I woke up and started journaling and it was just like in my head. And so I wrote it down. I drew it very, very poorly. I drew the first book, but I have the pictures. That's how I knew it was our 20th birthday since the inception of the ideas. I was going through old journals. I was like, whoa. So the first book bus drawing looks like a bread box, pretty much. It's a drawing of a Volkswagen bus. No one would know that's what it was, I don't think, but that's what it was supposed to be. So I just wrote it down and went back to bed, that feeling you get where you're like, yeah, all right, that's it. I'm going to do that. So luckily, I did not overthink this. If people sometimes ask me, well, what's your business plan? What was this? And I'm like, if I'd have sat down and made out a whole business plan from the get-go on what I wanted this to look like, I probably would have overwhelmed myself and scared myself off, honestly. So I just went to bed, woke up the next morning, started telling people that this is what I was going to do. I think people thought I was pretty crazy for it. My friends were supportive, but definitely nervous for me. So bless you. And
Thank you.
ended up over, the next really ended up being a little bit over a year's time that took me to get everything started. But I cashed in my very small 401k. I bought a Volkswagen bus and got on the road. I didn't really know exactly where I was going to go with the book bus. I just knew that I wanted to provide access to books to people that might not have the opportunity to have books. Whether as a kid, I spent a lot of time in hospitals and health departments and places like that because we did not have a lot of money when I was a child. And also my younger brother was very ill. He had multiple special needs. So we were in the hospital a lot. So I knew that maybe some of the places I would go would be places like that where kids were kind of stuck, right? And they were bored and didn't have anything to do. So that was really the initial thought, was places like that. So I worked, my job was not very far from a hospital, Tampa General Hospital. So I was going to just quit my job. My boss was like, oh my God, don't quit, here, I'll give you a day a week off. So I took my lunch breaks and I'd take a wagon full of books and I'd drag them over to the hospital and the Ronald McDonald House. And so that's how it started. I then had a friend, this is an exciting thing. I had a friend, I'll tell you about the other part of it later, but I had a friend that had a little girl in Head Start and she was like, oh, can you go read to Ivy's class? And I was like, yes, I didn't read aloud to kids at all at that point. I had to borrow books from her in order to read aloud. But as soon as I read to Head Start, that's when I knew, okay, for sure, this is where I'm supposed to be, in classrooms and with kids in this capacity. So since then, I would say that it's definitely become much more than I could have ever dreamt for it to be. The reality of it is much better than the dream was. So I'm happy for that.
Well, I'm sure we are all happy that your just little vision that night at 3 a.m. blossomed into a 20-year project, spreading book joy for thousands, hundreds of thousands of kids, and sharing literally 1 million books. That's just an amazing accomplishment, truly a remarkable and admirable feat, and I'm so grateful that you created Bess the Book Bus, that your vision didn't just become a reality, but it also became kind of a force to be reckoned with in the book world.
Oh, thank you. Well, I appreciate that. It does feel that way. A lot of times, it's been quite an adventure, I would say, because it has become, we're a nonprofit, but it's become also a business, which is something I didn't anticipate. And so there's a lot of things that go into that. And so through the years, there's definitely been some challenges, which I'm grateful for because I've learned a lot doing this. But the buses, there's things in this world that I think were just meant to be born. And I'm just lucky to be the one that this project landed with, sort of, is the way I feel about it. It's meant to be here. And times, the pandemic is an example, times when I think this organization maybe shouldn't have made it because it just was very on the outside odds that we would make it through certain things. It has. And I think that's just because it is supposed to be. And not for me at all. I'm thinking of myself as like the bus driver, right? Like the bus feels like its own entity. It really does. So, and I don't do this by myself in any way, shape, or form. I have friends and family. I now have a coworker.
Wow.
We actually have a second person since 2020, and I certainly would not be here without any of them.
I read that the name for your bus and organization is actually named after a real-life person, Nana Bess, who was instrumental in inspiring your early love for reading. So, would you mind sharing a little bit about Nana Bess and what she did to help foster your love of stories?
Yeah, no, not at all. So my Nana Bess is my mom's mom, and
Oh.
we lived with her for the first 4 years of my life. My dad was a traveling comedian and a traveling salesman, and so he traveled a lot when I was very young. So we pretty much lived with my Nana. Uh, I called her Nana Bess because I had a Nana Bess, and then also my Grammy on my dad's mom. And so we kind of, the whole family is a whole family of readers, really. But my Nana would take us, myself and my little cousin, would take us down to either on Saturdays, either to the library, which was right around the corner in Oxford, Massachusetts, or to a little store that was down in that same like area. And so if we went to the library, obviously we went to the library and got books, which was wonderful. We went to the little store, we got books we could keep. So that was something special as well. That's where my first memory of little golden books comes from,
Ah,
is from that time of my life. And so I've always really associated her with reading and stories. I did move away when I was 4. My whole family, which was just me, my mom, and dad at that time, we moved to Pensacola, Florida. And something wonderful that happened, even though I couldn't see my Nana much because we still did not have a lot of money, so we couldn't really travel back and forth to see her often. She would send me books in the mail all the time. And so they're
oh.
inscribed. I still have a bunch of them in my little like spare room that is sort of a library-ish room. And so she just became synonymous to me with books. And so when I was starting this, when the idea came into my head, it didn't come in as Bess the Book Bus at first. It came in at one of my first drawings calls it the Nana Bus after my Nana. And the reason is my little cousin could not say Nana Bess. He was little, like 2.5 maybe. So he would call her Nana Bus. He'd say, Nana Bus, Nana Bus. So I knew when I started this project that I wanted it to be named after her.
There are so many causes that Bess the Book Bus stands for. But what was it that made you choose to devote your days to books? And what is Bess the Book Bus's main mission?
Okay, so why I chose books, when I was really digging in and trying to figure out what I could do, I think the most important part of that question, there's 2 parts of it that were important for me. The first thing is kind of like, what am I good at, right? What do I love? What am I good at? What am I passionate about? When I think of things like what makes me happy, what makes me excited, and stories and books have always been a big part of my family life. My dad was a wonderful storyteller. My mother always read to us and told us funny stories. So I knew that had to play a part, and it fit in well with the second part of the questioning when I was looking at really the first, what am I going to do? Is what are some missing pieces, or what do I think? I really didn't know at this point. What do I think are some missing pieces in our community? Because I believe that everybody has a part to play in their community, and it can be a really little part, just going out and doing something good in your neighborhood, just something little means a lot. And so I thought, well, what are some of the pieces that might be missing? And I thought books, I thought maybe some kids don't have books. And when I told I was married at the time I started this bus, and my ex-husband grew up solid middle class. So when I told him what I wanted to do, he was supportive, but at first he didn't really get it because he was like, don't kids have books? And I said, well, I'm going to find out. Because I think books are such an important thing for so many reasons, a lot of them that you mentioned. A book, a lot of times I'll go to our local bookstore and I ask for what I call a life raft book. And it's a book that I can escape into at the end of a hard day, right? Like maybe you're just having a real bummer day and so you want to go away somewhere. You can't always go somewhere. So you can, though, if you get into the right book that'll just kind of take you away. And so I think that's an important part of books that students don't know about, kids don't always know about, because schools are so busy and so overwhelmed. And a lot of our students are so far behind that the joy of literacy isn't being emphasized, right? The joy of reading isn't being emphasized, just the need to read. And so I wanted to make that clear to kids, like reading is a fun activity you can do, and I just thought it's also a way, I really, really believe that stories connect and comfort us. And I think that's why at the beginning of the pandemic, you saw so many famous people, like what did they do? They went to kids' books, right? They started reading aloud their favorite kids' books and talking about their favorite kids' books. And that was so reaffirming for me because I said, I knew it. I knew like you go back to those stories because those are your friends. You've made friends in those books. You've explored other worlds in those books. And I just wanted to share that with kids that I felt might be in a hard place or time in their life or not have access to that. I just wanted to share that.
I love that. And I love the idea of life raft books, a book that you can escape into. I've never thought of, like, I know stories are 100% adventures, but just hearing the term life raft, wow. I'm
Yeah.
gonna start calling books that I read, like whether they're adventures or they're just stories that I need to read because, like, yeah, middle school can be very rough sometimes. I'm gonna call them life raft books, or maybe like, um, I guess maybe like one of the doors that falls off of like a sinking ship and you're just holding onto it.
Yes.
And like that's kind of how it feels like when school kind of brings you down, you're like sliding off into the abyss, but then you have a book and
Yes.
you're holding on to it. And
I agree with that. I think, I was always a reader even as a child, but middle school is really like the very end of elementary school and the beginning of middle school. I lived way out in the country too, so we didn't have, it's like 28 miles to the library, which I moved from New Orleans where you could go anywhere really quickly to that. So we'd get these big stacks of books. Every once in a while the bookmobile would even come, but that's where I really started needing. It was a different than just wanting to read. It's where I started needing to read and where I think I became really became a reader because it was part of my life. Like I remember traveling. I remember I was probably too young to do this, but that's part of the joy of reading too, is reading what you want to read, right? It was reading The Stand by Stephen King. I was probably your age.
wow.
And I remember sitting in my little room way out in the country, and it was way back when you had tapes instead of like just streaming music. And I remember reading that book and just turning the tape over and over. It became the soundtrack to that book. It was a band called Air Supply. So like it just became part of my life more at that age because I think middle school is probably the hardest thing that people go through.
That's for sure.
Yeah.
And I'm just in my first year, so
You're going to do great.
thank you. And my next question for you is so as I said earlier, Bess the Book Bus travels across the United States. It's visited 48 states in the US out of 50, all the contiguous.
Yes.
So, looking back on when you started this journey, did you see yourself traveling so much? And I'm really curious to know, what are some of the places we'll find Bess the Book Bus in 2023?
All right. So right at the beginning, yeah, I sort of did anticipate traveling as part of what we were going to do. Not right away, because right away, like I said, I was going to hospitals and, it took a while to sort of find the rhythm and groove, to really find what the book bus was supposed to be. It probably took a solid 2 years to really find who we were, right? I mean, just in this little 72 Volkswagen bus, milk crates full of books that I'd turn on their side so the kids could pick them out, or, but I think it was around 2005 or 6, I had this idea that I wanted to do something called, because I still had the Volkswagen bus, so yeah, it was early. I wanted to do something called the Great American Book Drive, and it was sort of a play on words where instead of doing a book drive where people gave me books, I wanted to take books and drive them across the country and give them away. And so it wasn't that really imaginative of a trip, honestly, because I've learned so much. I was going to basically take I-10, the most boring road in America. All of them that go up that way are pretty boring, but all the way across the country and sort of meander. The Navajo was always on my list. It's still one of my very favorite places. But yeah, so that's what I was going to do. I could not get that. It took me until 2009 to get that funded. And that was sort of a funny happenstance situation that made that happen. One of the times we almost went under actually was right before that happened. So yes, I did envision travel. I think at that point I imagined doing it once. And once we were out there, I mean, we used to travel up to 4 months at a time.
Wow.
So it's different now because we're very, very busy here. We work really closely with the school system here in Hillsborough County. And so we're busy in our hometown of Tampa and St. Petersburg. But yeah, I did always want to travel. And our upcoming trip is going to be, we've done a pretty similar trip the last several years. The pandemic sort of changed. We used to come out your way. And
wow.
I do sort of miss that. We just don't have time to get out there. But this year, we're going to be as far north as Fort Kent, Maine. We go all the way to northern Maine every year. We do a lot of stops in rural Maine. On the way up, we're going to be stopping in Raleigh, North Carolina to work with, we're hoping, Habitat for Humanity in that area and United Way in that area. And then I've got a conference, a nonprofit leadership conference that I'll be at for a few days. Then we're going to go up through, it's a different trip than we usually do. The route's a little bit different, but we'll end up in one of one of the greatest things about what I do, you know, I mentioned all the people on my board and everybody we work with here, but also I meet the most wonderful people through doing this. And so across the country, over the last 13, 14 years of traveling, I've met some of the greatest people out doing what they can do. So one of the first stops I'll make is in Baltimore, Maryland. I work with a gentleman there called Shorty. His real name is Dwayne Davis, but he goes by Shorty, and he has Shorty's Underground Barbecue. And what he does, he's got a big barbecue grill that's on the back of his truck that he pulls with a truck, and he goes into the most vulnerable neighborhoods in Baltimore. I mean, he has a catering business as well, but he also, in addition to that, goes into the most vulnerable neighborhoods of Baltimore, and he partners with people. I met him in 2009 as I was out cleaning the bus one day. He stumbled across us, and he cooks for people for free. He just makes, and it's good. I mean, amazing barbecue. He just barbecues for hundreds of people, all for free. So I've been working with him since 2009. So that'll be our first real official kind of stop as we launch from the conference. And then we'll head to another favorite place of mine, which is Camden, New Jersey. I work with some wonderful people there. Townsend Press is one of our supporters in that area and nationwide. So we work with them, but also they just changed their name to the Free Book Project. It used to be called Camden County Pop-Up Book Library. So we work with them in Cam Care Health. So that's just another area that's great to work in. And then we'll venture from there. We're actually going to go, we won't go straight to Maine from there. We're going to go over, oddly, we're going to go over to Ohio to work with a partner in Ohio. Then we'll go as far west as Mankato, Minnesota. We work with Capstone Publishers in Mankato. So we'll do some events there. Then Wisconsin, Illinois. We'll cut back across the country and head up into, we're hoping Hartford or Bridgeport, Connecticut, Yonkers, New York, probably, or that general area. And then we'll head into New Hampshire and Maine and back home. But Maine's really, you know, I didn't, when we first got invited to Maine, I said no, because I picture vacation land, right? So I'm picturing all these like rich resorts. And I was like, this is a ridiculous request. Like, no, I can't come to Maine. Like, that doesn't make any sense. But I learned so much. We actually go into really rural, small towns, and they have a fantastic library system, but not a lot of bookstores. And so, and they're little communities. So the library it's wonderful, really. The library is still the hub of the town. It's still really the heart of the town. Art shows happen there, music happens there, everything kind of happens at the library. So we partner with a lot of libraries throughout Maine. And it's one of my favorite places to go. We actually travel with Darling's Ice Cream, and it's run by a car dealership, Darling's, and they have a free ice cream truck. It's like a very old school ice cream truck, and it will come out to events, charity events, and they give away ice cream for free, and they take donations for the ice cream, and then they give that to the charity that is there. So it's just it's very wholesome to me in Maine.
That sounds amazing. And hopefully one day you can come back out to the western part of the US, because there are still so many schools and libraries who need the help. Yes. But I know it's extremely busy, especially with the pandemic. It's still so awesome that you were even able to continue Bess the Book Bus during the pandemic, because a lot of nonprofits were forced to kind of shut down because they couldn't really travel out due to COVID. So it's great that you were able to continue, and you're still spreading book love everywhere you go.
Yeah, we feel very fortunate, because when the pandemic hit, it was a real reckoning, honestly, because when you looked at the CDC recommendations and guidelines, everything we did was wrong, right? Like,
Yeah.
like it was like a week before I was heading out for a nationwide trip, right? We were headed out to the part that I didn't mention, Texas, Louisiana, Mississippi. We're headed out to that leg of the trip, which we do in spring. And this thing was starting to hit, and I'm, calling my sponsors. They're like, no, it'll probably be fine. I was like, this one feels different, right? And then when the CDC recommendations came down, it's no large gatherings, right? No enclosed spaces. So we'll get 200 plus kindergartners together for a read aloud, and then we do this raucous read aloud. And then those 200 kids, we used to go inside of the book bus. So then they'd filter out in a line, and then they'd come in 4 or 5 people at a time into the Sprinter, which is a small, kind of a small space. So and then of course they're touching every single thing inside the vehicle, right? And so everything we did was wrong. So it definitely took some imagination, which I credit to books, a lot of reading. You learn a lot of plot twists when you read a lot of books. So we were very fortunate to be able to shift our model and make this work, and we had a lot of support during it.
That's awesome. And my next question for you is about your reading pop-up book fairs.
Yes.
So if you happen to be following the Bess the Book Bus on social media, everybody, you'll see that they set up what are called reading pop-up book fairs. They look so much fun in the photos that you share. And can you tell us what a reading pop-up book fair is and how this idea came about?
Yeah, absolutely. So really, my coworker Michelle named them. It's basically what we've been doing the whole time, right? It used to be that we'd bring the book bus in and the kids would come on board, like I said. And I don't think I ever answered your question about the mission of the bus, which is a very simple one, really. We operate in our most vulnerable neighborhoods across the country, but it's really about access and choice and joy, right? Because that's what reading is: access, choice, and joy. And so I had never really named what we did other than the book bus. Like, the book bus is coming to your school, the book bus is coming to your library. And then I have, she's not new anymore, but she was a new person. And as we started to refine our programming, partially during the pandemic, because now we changed from people coming inside the vehicle, we had a whole new bus built. And now we have the carts that roll out so we can set up book fair style. And so that was really her idea, to call them the Joy of Reading pop-up book fairs. And I was like, that's actually that is what they are. So it's a blast. The new bus is working out. It's a dream. I thought I would miss the old bus, and there's parts of it I do, because that one was a little bit magic inside. You go in and it's really like a bookstore married to library kind of feel in there. So it was wonderful. But this one is so much more impactful in a different way, because now I can be outside and talking with teachers and talking with more students at once, and it is a big book fair instead. And so we are able to set up teachers really couldn't comfortably get in the other bus because I was already in there, right? And you got 5 kids in there, so it's a pretty crowded situation. Kids don't mind being crowded. They will fit 10 of them in there if they could, but teachers are like, okay. So now we have a whole teacher book fair section, so teachers contribute for the classroom library, and that's wonderful because kids love helping their teachers choose and watching their teachers choose. So that I give all the credit for the name of that to my coworker Michelle.
And now my final question for you, is, drum roll please. I should really have actual bongos sometime.
You should get a drum,
yeah,
or at least drumsticks for your desk.
Yeah, I should. And
you deserve
so
those.
If you could meet any literary character, it could be your favorite author or your favorite book character.
Author. Oh man. Okay, now
can I have both? Why?
Okay, I have 2 different answers if I get to pick an author as well.
That's okay.
So, all right, I'm gonna pick my author first and then my character, and they're so divergent. I'll probably have to go for psychological testing after this answer. Okay, my favorite author is still Stephen King. I mentioned I started reading him when I was your age, maybe a little younger. So my mom, I mentioned we live way out in the country. My mom belonged to Doubleday Book Club. And so she had all these books that were they would certainly not be considered appropriate reading. But I would obviously sneak in and take books off of her shelf, because I would read through the library books or the bookmobile books, and those just looked more interesting anyway. The covers were all scary and terrifying. And so that's how I met Stephen King, first through the book Carrie. And I don't know, he changed me as a reader. It's the first time I really traveled in a book. is, I think really the stand is the first time I traveled, because that goes all across the country, right? And so
Mm-hmm.
I was actually able to travel inside of that book. And so
Wow.
I've reread his books over and over again. I would so much love to meet him. I really would like him to see the book bus, because I believe the book bus is a portal to other worlds. And I would like him to know that he changed me as a reader at that age and brought me so much. It's odd to say comfort because I was reading the scariest things, right? But it was comforting somehow. So that's my answer for author. There's so many good authors. That's a really hard question, but
Mm-hmm.
Stephen King. Now, character. If I had to meet any character in a book, it's Despereaux, Tilling from Tale of Despereaux. And we talked earlier. I pretty much love any character
Mm-hmm.
uh, from the Kate DiCamillo books, because they're just always good. It was hard to pick between Despereaux and Winn-Dixie, in all honesty.
Mm-hmm.
So Despereaux, because Despereaux leads with his heart, and obviously I love the way he can smell and taste books, and just his love of reading, and his love of love, right? And he leads with his heart, and he's just so earnest and faithful. And even though he's afraid, he does the hard thing, right? And so I think I've been wanting a felted mouse for so long for the bus. I haven't found a good one yet, because I think it's because of Frederick. Apparently I like mice and I didn't really know it, because of Frederick and Despereaux. I think they're just, sometimes book characters are the best people, even when they're not people.
Yeah, definitely. I love those answers both so much. And while I have not yet dived into the land of Stephen King, I do maybe pretty soon, as like I get into the YA kind of years. I don't know if I'm
Yeah.
really ready for those kind of horror books yet, but Kate DiCamillo, her stories are just chef's kiss.
Yes.
They're true. They're like one of a kind.
They're magic, right? Like they transport you. Even when I follow her on social media as well. And just when I read her stories about her daily walks, just the way she sees the world, I think, and that's something else I love about Despereaux, actually, that I didn't mention, is his sense of wonder, right? We lose that a lot because the world's a hard place to live in. And it is, you get beat up a lot as a kid, and as you grow up, there's just, the world's coming at you sometimes, and it's a beautiful world and a wonderful world. But I think sometimes through all the trials and tribulations, we lose our sense of wonder, especially as adults. And I tell kids when I'm reading to them aloud and when they're choosing their books at the book bus, I think they think I'm lying, but I'm not. You're never too old to read a good picture book, right? Like I think I tell them I'm 52 years old. I read picture books because they're awesome, and I learn from them. There's so many things from picture books. So yes, so Kate DiCamillo, anything she writes. So my highest compliment to a book first went to, because of Winn-Dixie. I didn't even realize it when I told a kid that I wished I'd never read that book before so I could read it for the first time. Because when you love a book that much. Yeah. So that's how I feel about Despereaux as well. And I have reread both of them.
This has been an amazing day for me, talking with Jennifer Francis from Bess the Book Bus. Thank you so much for joining me today. I am proud to have you on my podcast because you've shared literally a million book smiles with kids across the country, and your days are filled with spreading endless kindness in the world. I can't imagine how wonderful it must feel each day knowing you're doing so much good. And the best part, there's still more good to do. And yeah, thank you so much for sharing your heartwarming story with me.
Thank you so much for having me on. Hopefully one day I'll end up out your way, or if you ever end up on this side of the country, I would love to have you on a ride along. I would warn you that it's already too late for you anyway. You'll get addicted to doing it, and then nothing can stop you. I think I'm one of the only people in the world that wants to win the lottery so I can keep doing my job. I'm like, can I just win the lottery already so I can just fund this thing forever and just keep doing this? So thank you really so much for everything you're doing. And honestly, reach out to me if there's another project you want to have books for. I'm happy to send you some more books.
I will definitely reach out to you, and I'll do my best to promote and share your project as well. The interview will be out soon. Well, we're still recording, so I guess it's out now for all of you. And yeah, just keep being the amazing you that you are, shining a light on stories that need to be told, and have a wonderful day. But and
You
everybody,
too.
keep on reading, everybody, and read. Just read, read, read. What else can I say? Have a great day. Stay safe, and bye.
Bye. Nice to meet you.